Well, good morning, everyone, for Tip Tuesday. And this morning we have Brandon G., who is a professional headhunter, so to speak. So he helps with recruitment. And he's here to share with us some ideas and tips on if you find yourself in a position where you need to look for a new job, or if you know of someone who finds themselves in a position where they need to search for a new job, what are some things to keep in mind, how to set ourselves up for success, and possibly be headhunted ourselves. So with that, Brandon, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Holly. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for signing in or logging in or however you want to term that. But I am a headhunter. The technical title we use professionally is I'm a senior talent acquisition specialist. So with all the verbiage, you can see why I prefer headhunter because it's only 2 words versus 5. I work with a company called Productive Resources. I've been with those guys for about 6 years. Productive Resources really is an engineering consultant company. I won't break it down a whole lot, but my job really is to connect people looking for work to managers looking for people. So I can kind of consider myself somewhat of a life coach too, because there's a lot that goes with that. Obviously, with what's going on today, there's nothing on the news other than COVID and short of toilet paper. But I can definitely talk to you about how the COVID is affecting things and kind of how to set yourself up for some better success. Right now, almost all companies are slow. Some sectors are much slower than others. For example, I work a lot in agriculture, heavy construction equipment, consumer products, as well as military defense companies. And they are all very, very slow. I would say just a virtually standstill, just nothing moving forward at all. So it makes it really hard to advance the ball, so to say, with managers or candidates when trying to find options just because the doors aren't even open. So right now, I would say is the best time to pull out that old resume, or maybe you're on the market, you need to update that new one, knock the dust off and refine some of your words on there because you should have a lot of good opportunity right now coming up in the future. So in doing that, I find I read hundreds of resumes every week, and I can tell you that my biggest pet peeve is spelling. It makes no sense to me how people cannot spell correctly on a resume, especially with all the cheat help they get from Google and everything else. It's amazing. And I work with people, from the production standpoint all the way up to chief operating officers and CEOs. I've staffed them all. Even the CEOs, I would say, are probably more lazy sometimes when it comes to some of those things. So be sure to take that first and foremost. That if you take anything away from today's conversation, take that point way more than anything. Another thing I would say with the COVID epidemic that we have right now, that's a great opportunity is networking. Right now is an awesome opportunity to team up with people you may or may not know, connect with old colleagues, whatever the case may be, and just expand that operation that you're building yourself. I like to tell people you are your own business. If you're on the job market or you're doing this, that, and whatever, it's the Brandon G enterprise. And what kind of marketability do I want to have? So in doing that, you need to connect with like-minded people to advance that ball again even further. The other part of this right now, and I try to say this to everybody I talk to, is patience. Right now with this timing, patience is huge. I'm working with a lot of college kids that are just graduating here in the next month or two, and they're in straight up panic mode because they can't find job offers, they can't find places to go, and it's easier to talk to people that have been in the market before and seen the highs and lows depending on their sector, but college kids don't have any idea. And if you're in that age range, I just tell you, just relax, work on your social skills, work on your resume skills, your networking, all those things I already mentioned. And let's say that maybe you've already put in some job or resumes or applications, whatever. I try to tell people, with this in mind, there's going to be a lot of people looking to do the same thing. So be patient, but be persistent. If you know who your recruiter is, or your headhunter is, or your HR person, or the manager is you're working with on to try to get a job, check in every 2 or 3 days, just say, hey, I'm still here. I'm still in the market. I'd really like to, if you need anything from me, go above and beyond what would normally be expected, especially in today's world, because honestly, the competition is going to be a little heavier right now because there's more people looking. Kind of going into my next spot I wanted to talk about was keys to success with all of this. I already mentioned, rebuilding your resume, but another thing I tell people I see a lot is people just put out this resume that's just this general overview of their life story. No offense, but nobody cares. You really need to refine that down to something specific related to what it is you're after. If I want to be a CEO, I need to have, information geared towards a CEO position, and especially if it's possible, gear it towards the industry that you're seeking to get into. If you're looking to be in healthcare, your verbiage should be entirely different than somebody who's trying to be in manufacturing. There's a lot of parallels and crossovers, but it's very important that you can decipher to whoever's looking at your information what your actual skill sets are. So keywords are key. I use a lot of keyword searches. Most managers use a lot of keyword searches. It's not because I'm lazy. It's just because it's a lot quicker. It's any given opportunity. I've seen, 60 to 100 resumes for a certain position. Well, I don't have months on end to go through every line of this stuff. So put in information related to the job description that you're looking at. If it's an engineering job, you better have information related to engineering. And especially when they put on those job descriptions, the kind of things that they're looking for, the hard skill sets, the soft skill sets, all of those things, try to include those on your resume so that they see clearly, okay, he does know what this is, or she knows what this is, whatever the case may be. Another thing I try to tell people too is there is nobody on the world that knows everything about everything. And a lot of things that transfer over well, you just have to be able to connect that dot and paint that picture and that team you're trying to get on's mind. Like for example, obviously I work with a lot with engineers. So they have hundreds of different CAD programs for engineers. They all do the same job, but they all operate differently. I'm a big person that talks in analogies. So I like to tell people it's like comparing a Ford versus a Chevy. They're both going to get you the same place. At the end of the day, they're doing the same kind of thing. But to operate a Ford sometimes is a little different than operating a Chevy. But at the end of the day, we're doing the same thing. Your resume keywords need to do that as well. You might not have that exact skill set, but you should be able to find some skill sets that relate to what they're looking for so that you can sell that essentially. Next thing on here is let's see, STAR methodology. Maybe some of you heard of it, maybe you haven't, but even if you haven't, I guarantee you've been exposed to it in any job you've ever been a part of. STAR is an acronym for situational, task, action, and results. You want to build your resume to kind of break that down because I can promise you almost 100% that no matter who you talk to during your next steps in that process interview-wise, they're going to give you a scenario that's something like this. Tell us of a time where something didn't go the way you wanted it to, and how did you respond, and what was the result of that? That is an absolute STAR methodology question. So have some good options and some good relatability to questions related to the job that you're after. Another thing I really wanted to touch on is, and this, I don't get paid by this company, so don't take this as a plug. It's just an awesome tool. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great tool because it's free, it doesn't cost anything, and it'll knock out almost everything I just talked to you about before we mentioned the word LinkedIn. It's a great way to connect with old chums and old pals, but it's more importantly a business setup. So try to find ways to connect with people in your industry that you're trying to be in so that you can build that portfolio. It's not so much that you can brag and say, well, hey, I got all these buddies in my network. That's great too. But opening those doors, we all know the more people you know, the more opportunity you're going to have in life, especially various things. And jobs is definitely one of those areas. So build that profile related to your skills, and don't be afraid to brag on some of yourself, because there's a difference when it comes to talking to people, about your background and your abilities and coming off as arrogant. But it's very important to come off and saying that, hey, I can do all of these things. If my bucket holds 100 items, try to fill it with 100 items. And LinkedIn is a great way to do that. And the reason for that is, I mentioned earlier, keywords. Well, when headhunters or managers are looking all over the web to try to find these people, that's exactly what they're doing as keywords. So you may have left that one word off that you had skill sets for, but decided not to include it on LinkedIn for whatever reason, and you never even got looked at. That happens a lot, unfortunately. So brag on yourself a little bit. Fill that thing up with as much information as you can. Another thing, and this is kind of my dirty little trick I learned a long time ago. So this is some free information I won't charge anybody for. Whenever you're looking at a company that you are interested in, let's just say it's John Deere and Ottumwa. Let's just throw that out as an example because it's a local, everybody knows it. The best tip I can give you is if you know who the company is and you know who the manager is that you may be speaking with, go to LinkedIn, pull up their profile, scan it over, get a little note, get some talking points about who they are, where they came from. And there's two great reasons for this. The first one is when it comes to interview time, you can speak in some confidence, hey, I know this guy or gal, and I see on your LinkedIn page you did this, this, and this. But more importantly, I think the real secret to this that a lot of people overlook is every time somebody looks at your profile on LinkedIn, you get a notification. It'll say, Brandon G. looked at Holly's LinkedIn profile today. Well, he's going to see that in that interview steps before you ever start, and he's going to take that thought as this guy's got some initiative and he's going out and doing his homework. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. So use that. It doesn't cost anything. It's a great tool. Honestly, also, there's a lot of great avenues on LinkedIn to help you get better at whatever you're trying to do. They have online courses for training on almost everything. Most of it's free. So that's definitely a great tool for sure. And then just kind of closing out here with interviewing, I've seen it all. I really have seen it all when it comes to interviews. I tell every person I talk to, dress for the position you want next in life. So if I'm going in and interviewing for a janitor position, don't dress up as a janitor, dress up as the janitor's boss. By doing that, you're coming in as professional and as you can be. You're showing them that you're going the extra steps, and it does make a difference. Don't wear your Hawaii t-shirts and flip-flops and khaki shorts and all that jazz. I'm telling you, I've actually seen this happen. Another good thing is bring pen, a paper, copies of your resume. And the reason for that is you need to be taking notes. As somebody's talking to you in that kind of a situation, you're trying to make that eye contact, but you really need to show that engagement that you're there for the right reasons, not just there because, workforce said you had to go to 3 interviews this week to get your unemployment. Don't be that character. Be the character that wants to go beyond the extra steps there. And the resumes, I always tell people bring at least 3 to 5 copies because you never know who's going to slip into that interview. And there's nothing more annoying to a manager when they got to pass a resume around the table instead of just having each person have their own. Another great thing I tell in the interview is questions. You have to ask questions. A lot of people, they always get this question at the end of the interview. So that was great, Brandon. Do you have any questions for us? And then they always go, nope, I think you guys covered it all. Don't ever say that. Always have at least 2 or 3 things to throw back in there. It does not have to be in depth. It's not rocket science questions. I kind of have 3 things I tell people. Ask a company question, going back to the John Deere. Ask a quick question about John Deere, the history, some softball toss-up, doesn't matter. Then ask a team-related question. So if I'm applying to be a janitor, I want to know what team I'm going to be on. What's that team structure look like right now? How's that process flow? That's a good question of engagement. And then ask a specific role question. What related to that position? Well, what would a day in the life look like Monday through Friday, or things kind of like that. And I've my next point, I think kind of goes 50-50. I always tell people to try to send a thank you follow-up, an email or a letter. I would recommend an email because today's world, a letter might take way too long to get there. And to be honest, I would say less than 50% of those thank you emails ever even get looked at. But again, to be fair to the system, it's better to show the initiative that you're going that route and just assume that it always gets looked at versus not even going that route. I just think that's a better play. So I guess to kind of help wrap this up a bit, closing here, spend some time looking at the companies and their history. Try to connect with as many current or past company members that you can. That's another great thing with LinkedIn too. I try to tell people, go to people that used to work there and ask them, come friends with them, or even if you don't know them, LinkedIn it's pretty much a judgment-free zone for the most part, and just ask them, hey, I'm looking at John Deere. What was your experience like there? And they'll almost always be blunt with you. But again, take it for a grain of salt because you don't know why they're no longer there either. But it's always good information. And be patient and be persistent and expand on your skills related to the role. And like I mentioned, right off the get-go, spelling. Make sure everything is spelled correctly so I don't have to correct it. So that's kind of a broad overview. I could talk for days about how to make people better at what they're doing, professionally speaking, but I just wanted to kind of touch on those points right now. So I guess I'll throw it back to you, Holly. Any questions or comments from anybody?
Yeah, that's great information, Brandon. I love that you talked about the STAR methodology. We all get those, can remember those questions about tell us a time when.
Right. I do it with my children, right? I do it with my own children. Now, was this the best solution, or could we have done something different?
That's awesome. That's great.
Yep.
And just some of those things that we forget about, that we're not always thinking about. Maybe we're not looking for a job, but in uncertain times, maybe we just need to look at our resume and dust it off and look at it again.
Right.
So.
Well, I get a lot of sad stories, and they really are sad, where I talk to guys that have been in companies for 20 or 30 years, and, they haven't touched a resume since the 80s. And they pretty much call me saying, hey, I don't even know how to do this. I haven't opened a Word document to make a resume in 20 years. So even just to make your life simpler, I always try to recommend, every 6 months to a year, set a reminder on your calendar, just pull your resume up and update any information that needs to be updated. Because we all know with our great brain power, as time ticks on, we start to forget things that we did do. And those are great skills that could have been applied to a resume or an interview, and we just totally spaced off that we ever did some of that, 5-10 years ago. And I would mention too, I don't think I said this, but don't ever send anybody a resume over 2 pages. I got guys with 40 years of experience that could write novels on what they've done with certain companies, and they've earned it. I'm not saying they haven't earned that, but you're going to get 35 seconds of visibility to your resume. 1 page is ideal, but it's hard to stuff 1-page information. Two is tops. Don't just try not to go past 2. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's good information too. So, well, we are going to take some questions here in a second, but I'm going to stop the recording before we do. Thank you so much for just sharing your ideas and thoughts and being the professional that you are and giving us ideas on how to move forward. So thank you so much, Brandon.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.